Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another episode of toy-polloi and the third part of Can This Vintage Death Star Droid Be Saved? Now here in front of me you can see three Star Wars Death Star droids. The one in the middle is actually an original Death Star droid. Nothing's been done to it. This is exactly how I got it. So you can see the chrome on it is in reasonably good condition. It still has quite a lot of the paint left on its face there. But the guy on the right was the one that you will have seen in previous episodes of Can This Vintage Death Star Droid Be Saved, and he started off as a very tatty looking Death Star droid. I think his leg was busted off, this leg here, and he looked pretty rough. He'd had a metal pin put through his legs to hold them on. Now I repainted this one a couple of times using just some off-the-shelf silver spray, and this is what he looked like at the end of the second video. Not too bad, still it's pretty passable look to him, a little bit on the sort of dull grey side, but certainly not too bad for a army building set. But since then I've received another Death Star droid and I've been doing some tests, and this is what that one looks like. As you can see, that's a lot nicer. The chrome on that is looking pretty good. I haven't painted on the black yet, but he certainly doesn't look too bad. So today we're going to have another go at restoring this Death Star droid. But the first thing we've got to do is obviously strip off the paint and get him back to the bare plastic. Now in previous videos you'll have seen me strip the paint off this using oven cleaner, and that works really well, but since then I found a slightly easier method which does just the same job, and that's to use some .3 brake fluid. You'll have seen me use this to remove paint on some of my other projects recently, and as this has just been sprayed with aerosol sort of spray paint, this should remove quite nicely. So I'm just going to dunk this figure in some brake fluid. This brake fluid has been used quite a few times. It should be more of a sort of amber colour, but this is red from previous sort of paint removal jobs that I've done. So I'm just going to drop in both parts of the figure, and we'll leave this for an hour or so, and it should loosen the paint, and then we can sort of brush that all off, and we'll get him back to bare plastic and we can start the new chroming process. And here is a Death Star droid after an hour or so in the brake fluid and a bit of a clean under a tap. As you can see, all the paint is now gone. This figure has been dunked quite a few times. I've stripped the paint off it about 3 or 4 times now, which is why the front of him is starting to go a little bit cloudy, but it doesn't really matter because this is all going to be painted. So for painting this guy and doing the chrome, we are going to be using the Molotow liquid chrome pens that I've shown you previously. Now I've seen a few people sort of not really like these, but sort of moan about them a bit, that the fact you can't touch them much after you've chromed. But actually with these pens, the longer you leave them, the better the coating gets, and that's really going to be the case with doing this Death Star droid. To do a bit of painting, and we're going to wait quite a long time. If I bring in the one that I've previously done in the pens, this was done maybe a month and a half ago and then just left, and I haven't touched it since. But leaving it that long, the paint has a good time to fully set, and now you can see I can touch the surface, and I've handled this one quite a lot, and the chrome finish doesn't wear off. So it's just being a sort of a patient person is what you need for doing the chroming with this. So we can do exactly the same with this guy here. I'm going to chrome him. I'm going to chrome him in stages as well. So we do a little bit, wait for a couple of hours, do a little bit more, then sort of wait a couple more hours, then do a little bit more after that. And giving long pauses between each sort of section that we do allows it to dry and stops it sort of going grey when you touch it. And then once this is all done, I'm going to leave it for a couple of weeks to let everything dry completely fully, and then we can go and do the sort of black painting and sort of finishing off touches. Now I have a stand here, and the reason I've got a stand is because I can hold one leg, do a bit of painting, and then put the figure back on the stand so it's not sort of touching anything. And I will leave one foot to be sort of painted last, and I have 2 of the Molotow pens here. This one is what size is this? I think this is the 4mm size nib, and then this one here is the what does it say on it? This is the 1mm size nib, because you'll need 2 different sizes for doing all the different areas, and these have been well shaken. If you can hear, I've shaken them a lot, and I've got a little bit of paper here so I can test that everything is running smoothly on the pens. So we can just get started, and I'll do a little bit of this and then we'll wait and we'll do a little bit more. It's going to be a slow process, but that will give you the best finish. After a couple of hours of waiting, you can see that the first bit of chroming has dried and it's gone pretty nice. It's looking nice and shiny. So I'm now going to do a little bit more. And doing it like this, as I say, it does take quite a time to do, but it gives you a much better surface, and it stops you running the risk of sort of sticking your fingers on things and getting sort of marks on everything. So I'm now going to do the next stage. I've shaken up the pen again, and I'm going to do a bit more on these arms, and then I'll move around to doing the back of the sort of upper torso of the figure. And I'm not going to do the hands at the moment. I'll do the hands last, because that again means that I've got something that I can hold on to and stops me sort of rubbing, or sort of running the risk of rubbing any paint. And you can see here that this tip of this pen is a little bit too big to get into some of the sort of smaller areas, which is why I've got these smaller pen, and I'll use that at a later date. So again, I can rotate this round, making sure I'm not touching anything. And I'll just do the paint on this arm as well. Okay, and I'll now do the back of the figure and then let it dry again for a couple of hours, and I'll start work on the legs after that. I'm starting to get somewhere now with the figure. It's just a case of being very patient between each bit of painting. As you can see, that chrome is looking very nice. So I'm going to do another of the legs, and then I'll wait again for a couple of hours. I'll do the other leg, and then I'll start sort of finishing doing the little bits of hands and that. For most of it I'm going to be using the larger pen, but obviously as I get to the sort of finer detail areas, any bits that have been missed, I will use this smaller, thinner pen. So let's just get this next bit done. Now on this one I'm going to do one of the legs, and because I want it to sort of stand up on this stand, I'm just going to sort of get the legs roughly how I want them, so that I know that when I put it on the stand the leg won't be touching the floor or anything like that. So let's get this next bit done. So that's another leg done. I've not done the bottom of the foot at the moment, but I have also painted the hands while I'm at it, because it seems sort of silly not to do them. So you can see it's starting to look pretty nicely chromed. Again, I'm going to leave this for 2 hours and I'll come back and do the other leg. So after a few hours work, you can see the Death Star Droid is starting to look good. It's actually this one on the right. This is an original one, and that's one I've previously painted with the Molotow pens. Now I've seen people online do a top coat on these using some owl-clad stuff and an airbrush, but I found actually the trick that you need to use with them is just to leave the paint to dry for quite a long time. This one in the middle has dried for about a month, and that seems to be the ideal time for it. That allows all the sort of chemical reactions to go off and everything to evaporate, and you're just left with a nice chrome finish that you can touch and it doesn't dull. So I'm going to do exactly the same with this one that we've just painted, and I'm going to leave it for about a month, and then we can come back to it and paint on the bits of black that are needed to finish off the sort of the final look of the Death Star Droid. So you do have to be patient, but it does work, and being patient when toy fixing is something you just have to learn. Sometimes things take time. So we're going to come back to this in about a month, and then we can finish this droid off. And welcome back. It's now a few weeks later, but for you time has absolutely flown by. So the last thing we need to do on these figures is to paint the black on. The chrome has gone off really nicely, and you can actually touch it without it going dull. So all we're going to do is paint the black on using some Humbrol acrylic paint. So I've got number 21 here, which is a gloss black, and I'm going to paint that onto the eyes and the shoulder pads, and then these figures are done. So it's a fairly simple process, and it's one of the easier figures to paint just because there's such a small amount that needs painting. So make sure the gloss goes on nice and neatly, and also make sure that you've mixed it really well, because if you don't mix it well it tends to stay a little bit sticky for sort of a longer time. But if you've mixed it really nice and properly, it will dry, and it will dry without any sort of stickiness left to it. And here are the finished droids. The one in the middle is actually an original one that I've not touched anything up on. It's exactly as I found it, and the two on either side are the ones that have been done with the Molotov chrome. As you can see, the chrome finish is not too bad. It's still not quite as shiny as the original one, but overall I'm really happy with the result. It's certainly a lot better than the stuff that I used from the spray can. It gives a much shinier finish, and as I say, if you leave the Molotov chrome for a good 4 weeks, it's actually a pretty sturdy surface and you can handle it and do quite a lot with it. So really it's just a case of being very patient when you're painting these figures and just being prepared to wait a long time. As you can see, the results I've got on these two Death Star droids is pretty impressive. So there you go, that's the third go at can this vintage Death Star droid be saved? And the answer of course is yes, these two look pretty good and they're going to go back in my Imperial Army and on display here at toy-polloi. So I hope this video has been of interest to you, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.